Hey guys, how you going? It's Nathan here from FER Contracting. I'm out on a job site currently doing a little bit of thermal overwatch for feral pigs in a conservation area, but I've got a couple of minutes spare between scans, and I just thought I'd take the time to do a quick video to talk through a couple of concepts with relation to a question that I get asked probably 3 to 5 times a week by various people. The question being, how do I start a business doing what you're doing, or how do I get involved in the industry? I guess the key point straight up front is that the use of the term industry is interesting, because feral animal control or professional shooting, conservation land management of feral animals, whatever you want to term it, it's a fairly unregulated space in that there's not a lot of very specific legislation that applies directly to the role. However, there's a lot of legislation that applies with snippets of legislation from different areas that are relevant to the role itself. So that being the case, really the key issue is starting a business itself and then getting the required standards of weapons licensing. From there, it really comes down to what your clients require. So the most important part and the first bit of advice that I've given everyone who's asked the question is have a bit of a critical look at what your business market might be, because it's well and good to have a good concept, but to work out if something's viable or not, you need to determine whether there's a customer base and whether there's opportunities to conduct that work in a paid fashion in your area, and if there isn't, are you willing to travel to achieve those roles? So I guess there's, that's pretty bland and boring stuff, but the reality is that's what a lot of people don't do. So they probably see the relatively shiny side of what running a business like this is, which is, the fun stuff, cruising around in 4-drives, ATVs, and choppers from time to time, doing the hands-on on-ground work, getting great results, good photos on social media, that type of thing. What you probably don't see a lot of in the background is the grind that comes with it. So, the tendering for various programs, the risk management planning, the compliance activities, all of the record keeping, data collection, bookkeeping, the straight business side of business, all that sort of stuff, all of the client liaison, the constant emailing, and then, with all of that considered as well, when you're actually out on the ground doing the programs, obviously there's not a lot of point in publicising when there's not much going on, but you certainly don't really get a chance to see the long boring nights where you're doing compliance work and there's really not actually that much going on, because you're really doing more monitoring and surveying than you are actual control. So I guess there's some key realities there, but if I had to give some very specific advice to someone who wanted to start out in the industry, I guess the first question is, would I support someone having a go, or would I recommend that someone does get involved in the space? And yeah, definitely I would. So there's a lot of good things about this line of work. There's being involved in the outdoor spaces. You obviously, if you set up a good little business, then you are your own boss, which is fantastic. You get to meet some really interesting, cool people, and you get to travel to some really great places and do some good things. And generally speaking, you get to have a really positive impact on the environment as well, which is obviously fantastic. But it comes with a little bit of work. And so the first thing that I would recommend that anyone who is thinking about starting up a business as a feral animal controller, professional shooter, conservation land manager, whatever you want to call it, is have a good look at that market base and write yourself a business plan straight up. So you can download them from a range of different sources on the web. Queensland government sites have copies of templates of business plans, but sit down and actually take the time to critically think about what the opportunities might be in your area. Are they conservation based? Is there a lot of agriculture? Is there a lot of council work that needs doing? What are the typical feral animal control problems that are in your area, and how they might relate to services that you're able to offer. Go through the strengths and weaknesses of such a business, and certainly identify, those key elements of what you might need to operate a business like that. What insurances do you need to have? What sort of qualifications might your client base require? Your licensing, what level of license do you need? Is it just a straight occupational firearms license for Cat A, B, or do you need something more advanced than that? and consider all those relevant factors, and then work out whether the juice is worth the squeeze, because it is a very interesting concept when you start a business like this. If hunting was your hobby beforehand, hunting's probably not going to be your hobby too far after you get into it, obviously, because you spend a lot of your working life doing that, and it probably ceases to be something that you want to do on your weekend and in your spare time. So give that a bit of a think as well, whether that's something you want to do. But once you've written up that business plan and considered some of the merits there, that's really where the rubber hits the road, and you can start having a think about whether it's a thing you really want to do, whether you want to proceed with chasing that level of licensing, whether you want to coordinate the insurance, whether you want to do the setup of a small business, what sort of small business structure are you going to set up when you do that. Okay, and some of that will relate back to the type of clientele that you're hoping or anticipating to get. So, not to discourage anyone from having a go, I absolutely think you should have a go, but just be aware of the realities that come with it. It very much isn't a case of just having a firearms license and then going out and doing the job. There's a lot more that goes with it. Certainly some things that will help anyone who's prospectively interested in the industry is have a good background in planning and conducting remote area work, the logistics that come with that, and also be pretty handy when it comes to risk management. So having a bit of a background in risk management is really handy, and my background prior to starting up FVR was military, so I've got a pretty hands-on approach to risk management and some pretty handy qualifications that I came into the business with. But certainly if you don't have a lot of background in risk management, that is something that every client in the current environment is going to be very interested in, is your ability to risk manage, both formally and informally, and also your level of insurance to cover off on risks that they may face, whether that's just straight out liability from the conduct of your business activities, or there's potentially some indemnity insurance or something similar if you're doing a lot of reporting or that type of thing. So anyway, a couple of things to think about there. By all means, I don't want to discourage anyone from getting in touch if they do have questions. I'm more than happy to help. I'm still filling the role as the occupational shooting representative for Shooters Union Australia, and as a number of people on here can probably attest to, I've been happy to help out with a broad range of firearms issues and general small business advice type stuff. So by all means, feel free to ask. But hopefully this gives a couple of general pointers of things to think about in terms of setting something like this up. And obviously, is the juice worth the squeeze? From my perspective, yes, it is. I've been quite fortunate with the way that my business has gone over the years. But again, I'd say that there's no such thing as luck in business. So luck doesn't exist. What does exist is persistence, hard work, doing your own research, and then finding your own markets and making them work, and then having great client relationships and being quite willing to do the hard work, to go to the hard places and to do the jobs that need to get done. Because obviously there's no just walking in and starting up and being immediately successful. It takes time, and people, particularly where firearms are involved, or you're working on people's land, they need to gain a good level of trust. Anyway, hopefully this has been at least a little bit helpful. Feel free to leave any comments or ask any questions, and I'll get back to you where I can. But for those of you considering starting off in the industry or starting a business doing this type of work, all the best, and do your research before you start. It'll stand you in good stead. Thanks.